So the next presenter is from Russia, Lesnoy, Russia, Lyceum.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're the students of the Lyceum from Lesnoy, Russia, Kirill
and Vladislav.
The subject of our presentation is the Middle East, pathways to a nuclear weapon-free zone. If you ask us a question, how do you want the world to be in the 21st century, the answer will be quite simple. Nuclear weapons-free. Mankind has suffered from hundreds of wars and conflicts, and as a sequence, more and more sophisticated weapons have been created. Have a look at the screen, and you can see how awful and disastrous nuclear war is.
Is it possible for people to forget about nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? About people suffering some deaths? Never. Why should people live in a fear for nuclear war? The spread of weapons of mass destruction has become one of the greatest threats to international security. These threats are both global and regional. We have chosen the Middle East for our research work as it is a battleground for empires, one of the conflict-prone and heavily armed regions in the world. Regional conflicts and disputes over nuclear weapons programs in the Middle East continue to complicate global efforts to control the spread of nuclear weapons.
What makes the Middle East a region of concern with regard to nuclear weapons? Why do countries in the Middle East acquire nuclear weapons? Are there any measures for inhibiting proliferation in the Middle East? Is it possible to establish a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East? And what are the hurdles for establishing a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East? During our research work, we answered all these questions.
For more than 30 years, the Middle East has been a region of concern with regard to nuclear weapons. What is more, this situation has become more threatening. All states in the region are involved in one way or another in activities related to weapons of mass destruction. The Middle East is characterized by enormous armed ethnic, religious, multinational and territorial conflicts, which lead to disorder and destabilization in the region.
Please look at the screen. If we ask you a question, what will happen if you build your houses in a place where other people have already lived? You may just say that there will be a conflict and territorial disputes among these people. What we can do to achieve peace to anyone in the region, to avoid conflicts, aggression, sufferings and deaths. We understand that the solution is possible if we think about peace talks, but it is not so easy. Now you have just seen the example of the long-running Arab-Israeli conflict in the Middle East. It's in regard to the existence of the State of Israel and its relations with Arab nations, and the Arab reject of Israel's right to exist as a sovereign state in the Middle East. We share the historian's point of view that the conflict between Israel and the Arabs is one of the major causes of wars in the Middle East. It has lasted for over a century. It's one of the conflicts driven by history, ethnicity, religion, politics, and territorial disputes.
The Middle East still remains a problem region in terms of non-proliferation and non-use of nuclear weapons. Israel, which remains outside the Non-Proliferation Treaty, has a nuclear arsenal estimated at 200 nuclear warheads and maintains the policy of nuclear ambiguity. Iraq has used chemical weapons against Iran and its own Kurdish rebels. At least 4 of the region's nations, Iran, Iraq, Syria and Libya, have at some point been implicated in pursuing dual-purpose nuclear programs. With such a profound lack of confidence, none of the Middle Eastern states must be interested in the presence of nuclear weapons in the region, due to the great risk of nuclear weapons being used in case of a conflict.
What is more, we understand that acquisition of nuclear technology by a terrorist organization is the greatest potential threat to the safety and stability of the Middle East. For example, primary goals of Hezbollah and the Palestinian Liberation Organization call for the elimination of Israel. If any nuclear technology falls into the hands of terrorists, the threat will affect international security. In doing our research work, we have found out that countries in the Middle East acquire nuclear weapons to deter military aggression, to support their political independence, to strengthen political and international status, to gain an immediate tactical and strategic advantage against the enemies.
Now we suggest a short video of the students involved in the CIF project this year, who will share their opinions about the situation with nuclear weapons in the Middle East today and their expectations of inhibiting proliferation in the region.
My name is Anne. In my opinion, countries in the Middle East have cited power, protection and leverage as the main cause for their nuclear programs. I am sure that diplomatic measures should be taken to forestall the development of weapons of mass destruction.
My name is Dmitry. To my point of view, it is necessary to control proliferation through technical analysis of the production pathways for making nuclear weapons. Of course, controls won't work if the target state can find uncontrolled sources of supply or develop alternatives.
My name is Nastya, and as for me, I understand that the situation in the Middle East is becoming dangerously explosive and uncontrollable. As I see it, people should control export of nuclear materials and equipment, as it can provide information valuable for monitoring programs to develop nuclear weapons.
My name is Christina. I understand that it's impossible to make the civilian use of nuclear energy 100% resistant to proliferation. What seems possible is increase the hurdles for nuclear proliferation. I'm sure that it's possible to strengthen non-proliferation, but to do so requires political will.
My name is Anastasia. I see that despite various precautionary measures taken, nuclear proliferation in the Middle East continues to be a problem for international security. I think people should promote establishment of nuclear-free zone in the Middle East, but it should not prevent the use of nuclear science and technology for peaceful purposes.
We share our students' views and we would like to add that the effectiveness of all these measures depends on the degree of international cooperation. We agree with Sergei Rykov, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, that establishing a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East is inseparably linked to the regional peace process.
We understand that it's necessary to establish a nuclear weapon-free zone for some very important reasons. Firstly, it would help to avoid an arms race which would have negative consequences for the security and the economies of the countries involved. Secondly, it would build trust among countries in the region, which would potentially facilitate peace process between Israel and its neighbors. Thirdly, the establishment of a nuclear-free zone is very important for maintaining the global non-proliferation regime. The item entitled Establishment of a Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone in the Middle East was first included in the agenda of the General Assembly in 1974 at the request of Iran, later joined by Egypt. And one of the resolutions of the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East was adopted by the General Assembly on the 3rd of December 2012. Emphasize the practical and urgent steps required for the implementation of the proposal to establish a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. Paying special attention to the fact that the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone would greatly enhance international peace and security. welcoming all initiatives leading to general and complete disarmament, including the Middle East. Noting the peace negotiations in the Middle East, which should represent an appropriate framework for the peaceful settlement of the urgent issues in the region.
But the establishment of a nuclear-free zone is a real challenge for international community, as all states in the region are involved in one way or another in activities related to weapons of mass destruction. What is more, the Middle East is characterized by a high number of full-scale interstate wars, and it's difficult to establish a nuclear-free zone in the region among countries at war. Besides, it will be difficult to get all states in the region to sign and ratify the treaty establishing a nuclear-free zone in the region.
We see the treaty establishing a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East as a complex document which would increase security in all countries in the region. It should consider political, historical, technical and verification issues in the region to be important for such a zone. Besides, it should cover all weapons of mass destruction, including chemical and biological, as well as the delivery vehicles.
There have been many ideas for establishing a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East since the early 1960s. Cold War confrontation between the two superpowers was compounded in the Middle East by a tense standoff between Israel and the Arab world, as well as general instability. It appeared that establishing a nuclear-free zone would be in the interests of all the regional and global actors.
We suggest the possible steps of the outside powers to encourage a nuclear-free zone. Firstly, they should strongly oppose any development, such as a nuclear test or an attempt to circumvent the NPT that could damage the process leading to a nuclear weapon-free zone. Second, support joint projects on nuclear power for peaceful nuclear activities. Second, support regional space programs in exchange for minimizing any spillover from such programs into military activities. What is more, they should come forward with proposals for concrete measures for reducing tensions in the region, gaining control over arms race in the Middle East. We understand at whatever level of support and cooperation that outside states may extend to the Middle East, this cooperation should be structured to enhance the transparency of the corresponding activities within each state in the area.
We understand that the negotiations aiming to establish a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East will take many years, numerous conferences and meetings. We would like to suggest the effective pathways to such a zone. Firstly, there should be security guarantees for states not possessing nuclear weapons.
Secondly, Israel should join the NPT and negotiate with International Atomic Energy Agency the application of safeguards on its nuclear installations.
Thirdly, states in the region should accept Israel as a legitimate state and negotiate with Israel, working out the arrangements for creating a nuclear-free zone.
What is more, there should be confidence-building measures and verification with respect to state sovereignty.
All nuclear explosive testing should be prohibited in the region.
Nuclear materials and nuclear facilities should be used only for peaceful purposes.
And finally, all the nuclear facilities in the region should be placed under comprehensive International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards.
We admit that may be reasons to be skeptical about the prospects of establishing a nuclear weapon-free zone, which include the current volatile political circumstances in the region and lack of the progress over the years on the issue. But the need of urgent action is clear. Today's threats are dynamic. The response must be as well.
In conclusion, we would like to say that the work on the project of Middle East Pathways to a Nuclear-Free Zone has changed our vision of the world. Despite the situation in the Middle East, we are optimistic that peace in the region can be achieved. We should prevent proliferation as it leads to sufferings and deaths. We understand that the proposal to establish a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East faces many obstacles. We see the future of this region free from nuclear weapons.
We have examined the past of the Middle East, observed the present, and see the future without nuclear weapons. We have prepared the guidebook with possible steps to nuclear weapon-free zone, which is informative for both students and teachers. And please have a look someone. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. In conclusion, I'd like to say that nuclear war, dare to be told, brings loss and sufferings to the world. To stop it, all people need to be bold and support each other, be it winning or loss. For nuclear war means humanity's loss. Thank you very much for your attention. Now please, your questions.
You mentioned verification measures.
Yeah.
Could you just address in more detail the verification measures that you mentioned?
Right. More details about verification issues. I think verification issues is very important for such a zone because each component we suggest is very important because without verification issues it's be unbelievable to encourage a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. I think it's my opinion because without political, historical and verification issues it's really impossible.
So what would that look like?
Verification issues.
How would you implement?
Okay, I think this is a very difficult question because a lot of verification issues is very big issue, and I think it's very difficult to say now about these verification issues. Next question.
Yeah, I saw one. You want to?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that one of your steps towards a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East would be to bring Israel into the NPT.
Yeah.
Currently, there is no way to bring a country, a non-nuclear state or a non-signatory of the NPT into the NPT as a nuclear weapons state. So I was just wondering if you guys have thought about maybe what your talks were about that or what your research led you to. How would you do that? How would you bring Israel into the NPT?
Can you repeat?
Sure. So one of your steps was that you wanted to include Israel into the NPT.
Yeah.
There are currently
I think that
no ways.
it's really a global step to encourage global non-proliferation. I think because Israel have an ambiguity politic because Israel considered that they have Israel shield, not for attack any neighbors, to protect yourself from them. And I think it's very important to negotiate with International Atomic Energy Agency and sign the NPT for Israel.
No more questions? Okay, so let's give them a big hand.